We'll go ahead and call the Senate revenue to order. Today, I appreciate everybody being here on a random day for Senate revenue. We usually don't meet on a Wednesday. Appreciate everybody being here. We're juggling bills around left and right, and we appreciate the patience. Before I start rambling, you better take the roll, huh? I get going.
Senator French.
Here.
Senator Ide.
Here.
Senator McEwen.
Here.
Senator Pappas.
Here.
Chairman Beitman.
Here. Okay, now that we've dispensed of the roll, before we get into Senate File 68, I do want to extend my apologies to some folks last night who weren't here to defend themselves. We've been juggling bills back and forth, and we took up Senator Case's bill again upon adjournment, and he had made some comments that some members found offensive and degrading to them, and they weren't here to defend themselves. So after we're done with this bill, Senate File 68, I'd like to read a letter from one of the affected parties, because I promised them I'd make it right, because I feel bad as a chairman that I didn't rein in the testimony and offer and protect some people. So as a chairman, I feel bad for that. But anyway, just a heads up that that's going to be coming at the end of this meeting. To start the meeting, though, we're here to discuss Senate File 68, Tangible Personal Property Tax Exemption, sponsored by Senator McEwen. Senator McEwen, the floor is yours. You can describe your bill and let us hear all about it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This piece of legislation is quite simple. It exempts all personal property tax. And with that, I'll sit for questions.
Okay. Do you want to walk us through the bill, or you just leave it at that?
I can walk you through, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Basically, if you go to page 2, line 13 through 18, which described how personal property tax was handled, has basically just been deleted. And then it goes over on page 3, taxes upon all personal property, and that's lined out. It's deleted. It really is that simple. It's the old property tax bill with the word exemption put in and how property taxes are handled, taken out. And that's pretty much it, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Senator. We'll open up for public comment. Senate File 68, public comment is open. Anybody want to step up and share their thoughts on the bill?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Jeremiah Riemann here on behalf of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. This piece of legislation does cause us considerable concern, and its fiscal impacts are pretty deep and really hit the majority of the counties. In fact, it tends to hit mineral counties far more than it does other counties in the state. And I'm happy to get you this information. I don't have copies of it right now, but I'm happy to do that. But in 2022, roughly 40% of all Campbell County's property tax across all of the categories was tangible personal property, 40%. So if this legislation passed, that would evaporate. To give you some context for some other counties, Carbon and Converse County are over 50%. And in 2022, Sweetwater County was 67% of all of their property tax assessed was tangible personal property. So this, again, has some pretty considerable effects. Now, contrast that with Teton County, where less than 1% of their property tax assessed is tangible personal property. And again, I'm happy to provide you all this data. And these figures do change from year to year, and I have fiscal year 23 data that I can show you, but it's generally right the same with the numbers that I gave you for each of those counties. So it does cause us some concern. I'll just also point to one other example for you. Here in Laramie County, you have the data centers, and in particular, one large Microsoft, I think I can say company names in here, pays about $6 to $8 million in tangible personal property every year. If this goes away for that particular company, they'll almost be paying no taxes in the state of Wyoming because we already exempt sales tax on products that they purchase for those over a certain dollar amount, of course. So it would have a reverberating impact for Laramie County across all the taxing jurisdictions. So with that, Mr. Chairman, the numbers are pretty startling to us and give us a lot of pause with this particular piece of legislation. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd stand for any questions.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rem, you see the fiscal note on it. Does the money that's sent back to the cities, towns, and counties, what is it, $110 million? Does that negate this, or is there still an impact after that I think it's $110 million?
Mr.
Thank you.
Raymond.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Senator French, of course, the direct distribution, which started this session at $105 million, it passed the House at, I believe, just over $146 million. So that amount generally reflects what you all passed during the last biennium. You'll remember that's largely to replace lost taxes from other levers that we've pulled. Like we took off the grocery tax, and that was partly a replacement for that. We did some other tax reforms previously. That was a replacement for that particular action. So I don't know that I could equate that they're one-to-one in terms of this, but certainly direct distribution is a mechanism by which you could make up the lost revenue for this. I say that, but I also want to be very cautious because you're taking away a revenue source that we can generally depend on year over year and replacing it with a revenue source that, unless you memorialize it in statute, we have to come back to you every 2 years and ask for that. So it's not something that makes us all that warm and fuzzy to just change direct distribution, if that makes sense.
Follow up?
Quickly, Mr. Chairman, but don't you have to come back every 2 years for that direct distribution also?
Mr. Chairman, yes, we do. I'm just suggesting that if you use that to replace this, we would just ask that you memorialize it in statute rather than us having to come back every 2 years. It can be done in other words.
Anybody else? The County Commissioners Association, do you guys support the idea of going to a budget-based system where you guys would come up with what you need and then we will figure out how to get you that number instead of, because whenever we try to do any sort of tax relief, it's always no, we can't do it because you're cutting our revenues by X. But if we knew what the bottom line number was for a particular county to be able to provide the basic services that they need and operate the county budget. We're certainly not trying to paralyze any county budgets anytime we try to provide tax relief, but when every possible remedy we come up with the answer is no from the counties because that's your revenue and you can't touch it. Even if it's above and beyond the previous years or the previous 5 years, it's up over 100% in some places. At what point is enough, and can we take some of that money back and give it back to the people? and then maybe have the counties go present us a budget as to, and if they can't support it locally, then some state aid may be necessary. And I'm sure everybody on this committee would be more willing to vote for that, knowing that this is needed in some areas. Some areas might not need it. They might still have above and beyond their projections coming in based on economic activity and growth. But your thoughts on that?
Mr. Chairman, let me first challenge the assumption that we're opposed to everything. In fact, I've been very pointed with my membership this year that we had to find some pieces of reform that we could get behind. And that's why we have supported several bills that are before you this legislative session. Senate File 63, House Bill 45, the two mirror bills in terms of the 5% exemption it's a concept that we have put our support behind. We've put our support behind the refund program. We haven't opposed some of the other provisions that you all are considering where perhaps there's a backfill, there's a homestead exemption, both a concept in your body as well as in the House. So we are looking to solutions that provide reform as well as relief as part of this. Also challenged the counties to look at the optional property tax refund program. 5 counties are currently offering that program. From my perspective, there are a couple more that should get in that game and provide relief beyond what the state program is doing. So let me just say that first. The second part of that is in terms of the budget-based approach. And Senator Pappas and I just had that conversation last night. I don't think we're opposed to having that conversation during the interim. I do think that there are some considerations, some major considerations that have to come into that particular conversation. If you look at minerals, we only get one time to assess that property. And that generally is part of the problem of our system, right? That, if let's just say we eliminated all 12 county mills on a property that assesses or the fair market value is $200,000, you're going to save a taxpayer $228 total. But the impact is pretty significant. I wish I had the numbers right in front of me, but I'm pretty confident around these numbers. For a county like Campbell County, you'd save those taxpayers that $228. You'd lose about $4.7 million in residential property taxes, but you're going to lose another, about $50 million in mineral and other taxes. And so, we could provide that relief to the homeowners, but was it targeted enough and big enough that it really mattered against the loss that we're going to see as a result? So it's just a difficult conversation, and we're very happy to engage in that. And if that's a budget-based approach, we'll engage in that conversation.
Oh, we got a couple more. We'll start at the end and work our way back this way. Senator McEwen?
I'm going to start this out with, are you aware? So it's a question. We're adding $1.2 to $1.4 billion on this biennial budget. The state has 30+ billion in reserves. Everybody across the state is screaming for property tax relief. I guess my question is, or my statement, are you aware? I'm not opposed to making adjustments on this. Where I'm going with this isn't to pick on the cities and the counties. It's really to pick on the state budget. And it's a good place to start. Unfortunately, without a cut, there is no relief. You can move money around from this pile to this pile. You can tax over here instead of taxing there. But at the end of the day, the GDP, the jelly beans in the jar, is a finite number. And if you want to put less jelly beans in the jar, or take less jelly beans out of the jar, in a form of taxes, I believe you're going to really generate the economy. And my next, are you aware, we've had 3 presidents that cut taxes. That would be Kennedy, Reagan, and Trump. And they cut them pretty hard. And all of a sudden, the federal government had more money than they knew what to do with. So I believe, and I'd like your opinion on it, this will do a great deal to also energize the economy and help everybody out in the long run. So I just ask if you're aware and you agree. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Raymond?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and Senator, I want to be very clear, and I hope it came across that I didn't come out guns a-blazing on this particular proposal. I'm just trying to share some data relative to it. I'm very aware that the state has considerable resources. This particular legislation, as well as many of them, I don't want to just target this one, have a pretty significant financial impact at the local level. And so if you're willing to consider how to address ensuring that that impact is minimized or lessened, we're absolutely here at the table to have that conversation, and I want to have that conversation with you. I'm not here to say that people don't need reform and relief. We've got to be careful about how we do that, because my guys, to be really honest, aren't getting calls saying the roads are too smooth, the ambulance gets there too quickly, the fire trucks, again, too speedy. We don't hear that, and that takes resources, and so it's a partnership that we have to work through here, and I'm very willing to be a partner in that effort.
Senator French?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is along the lines of Senator McKeon. In many of the counties, especially Partway, but growing number of counties, the public is just begging, pleading for relief. So that's what we're trying to find. Does the County Commissioners Association have something in mind that would give that relief? I mean, versus reacting to what we propose, trying to maybe help us out. Like, okay, here's the proposal, and this helps everybody, keeps the local government, cities, towns, counties going, and gives substantial relief. Because, I'm telling you, I've had seniors, citizens call me up crying on the phone, bawling, begging me for relief. And I said, I'm trying my hardest. And they're like, I'm gonna have to sell my house and move away. And I've been in the community for 80 years, 60 years, whatever. They're just pleading in many of the counties, and that list of counties is more and more and more. So do you have good, solid idea for us to look at? Thank you.
Just remind you, we're talking about personal property tax, not real property right now, but you can answer that. If you want.
Mr. Chairman, Senator French, and I think I did earlier, we have supported a couple of bills that are before you. Senate File 63 is one of those. That's a reform and sets a cap and essentially an exemption above 5%. That's something that we are willing to support through this legislative process. We're also supporting the property tax refund program. And again, I mentioned that I have had that conversation with counties that more of them need to consider getting in that game so that we can provide the relief to those that have been in their home for a long time, bought it low, and now are on a fixed income and can't afford some of these property tax increases. So certainly engaged in that. We've supported some other things. House Bill 52 is one of those, which is a homestead exemption that everybody would benefit from in the state of Wyoming and can be done right away. That one is backfilled. We appreciate that backfill. It's also time limited, so it gives a 2-year relief and then lets that reform come into place. So those are all things that we're supporting in this effort, and we're willing to have other conversations about topics here. I just want to express that every county is different. It's very right that there are places where there have been considerable increases. But I've also got other members, and I've stated this in a number of the hearings this last couple of weeks. Take Niobrara County. I bet you'd be shocked to know that between 2018 and 2023, the county is only taking in an additional $43,000 in residential property taxes. They're not getting rich off of this. That's barely enough for them to do a mile of gravel road in the county. So it is different, and the levers that we pull do matter in this conversation.
Just a quick follow-up, Mr. Chairman. My apologies to the board and Mr. Ryman for, we're dealing with so many bills. This is the personal property tax exemption, so I'm just,
This is your old swather from 1974 that you're still paying taxes on.
Exactly. My tractor from 74, I'm still paying taxes on it. I took the left road, not the right road, so.
We're fine. Duly noted, that's okay. We're all tired, so. Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ryman being here. A lot of good questions, a lot of good answers. Senator Bidman brought up some of my thoughts with his question on zero-based budgeting, which, everything gets a little messy with, when you're starting off with a base and everybody doesn't want to go backwards. I understand that, but sometimes they need to. You used the example of Niobrara County. My first question is, do you know what portion of Niobrara County's taxes come from personal property? And my other question is, use the example of Converse County, where 50% of their revenue comes from personal property taxes. Is the services commensurate with that? And what happens if Converse County goes back to 20%? Does anything change with the services that happen there, or does services increase is the more industrial personal property tax revenue that the counties receive? Thank you.
Mr. Reman.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I don't know that I can fully answer that last question. I don't know the percentage of property tax against their overall budget. My guess is it's pretty significant in that county, given the amount of mineral base that's there, and so I certainly couldn't answer that, and I don't know what services they might have to cut as a result of that decrease, but 51% in 2022 of their property across all of the categories is tangible personal property. You asked about Niobrara County. For them, it's just under 15% in 2022. So quite a bit different for them.
So, Mr. Reman, if we were to eliminate this tax, I'm intrigued by the economic prosperity that this might generate. And you mentioned counties like Sweetwater and Converse, where there's a lot of oil and gas and mining activity. These mines and these major oil operations, they pay sales tax on this equipment when they purchase it. But then we charge them this personal property tax every year just for the privilege of owning it and keeping it on the property. And that's the unfairness of this tax that everybody hates and really wants to do away with. So if we were to give these people a break, the ranchers with the expensive farming equipment and the mines with the expensive haul trucks and the oil companies with all the expensive equipment that they have to account for and pay bean counters to account for all their stuff that they've already paid sales tax on. Don't you think that would unleash some economic prosperity that would benefit the counties? Kind of the trickle down effect. What would be your thoughts on that?
Well, Mr. Chairman, it's certainly very possible that your farm and ranch, it might stimulate some additional economic activity in the state of Wyoming. don't know that I could dispute that or support it. It may, because those are entities that we know are physically here. We do have a lot of mineral companies that are here, but I can't guarantee you that every one of those companies is going to take that money and invest it in Wyoming. Some of these are multinational companies that may just take that and run elsewhere. I just don't know how that particular scenario might play out. But I also presented one other scenario earlier in terms of Microsoft. If you take this away, they also have that sales and use tax exemption for the equipment that they're purchasing. So we're giving them essentially free rein in the state of Wyoming, and maybe that's going to incentivize them to put more here. I don't know, but they aren't like the other companies paying sales and use tax because of the exemptions that they have.
All right, thank you. Any more questions before we let him go? Sorry we took so much of your time, but it's good conversation.
Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate it.
Chairman.
Thank you. All right, next up.
Mr. Chairman, Bob McLaurin with WHAM. Jeremiah addressed a lot of the concerns that the 99 cities and towns have in the state. The only thing I would add is, particularly for the smaller towns, the towns under 500 or 1,000, their two principal sources of revenue are property tax and direct distribution. And all of our towns, 96 of the 99, assess all of their mills. So they're taxing themselves to as much as they can. Like I said, there's 3 that don't do it. So we believe it would have a detrimental impact. Like the counties, we're supporting a number of these bills. We support targeted tax relief. We're supporting 45, 63, and 52 as well. But Jeremiah addressed most of our concerns as well, so thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Any questions for Wham? Seeing none, thank you. Appreciate you being here today. Ms. Huxtable.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to speak for a few minutes. I am Dixie Huxtable. I'm the Converse County Assessor, and I'm going to speak with a couple hats. The first one's going to be as a legislative chair for the Wyoming County Assessors Association. And typically, we do not take a position on tax policy. We basically report back to the committees whether we can administer and what the possible impacts are. Certainly, we could administer this bill. That's probably not in question. The impacts you've seen through a fiscal statement. What I wanted to maybe give a little insight in as to who pays the tax and where it goes. So as you know, mineral industries pay a lot in my county, and they do pay a lot across the state. A point that I don't know that's been made, I know there's a Department of Revenue person here that could probably speak to this, but a huge percentage of our state assessed property, as much as 90%, I believe in the fiscal note, is deemed to be personal property. They don't value the property at the state level like we do at the local level, where we go out or we count up the pumping units, or we count the tractors, or we count the whatever. They have a unitary system that they basically use to value theirs, and he can certainly speak to that. But they've done an effort to try to find out how much of that value is personal property. And speaking from my county and looking into Converse County, a wind farm, I have 5 of them. Now they are locally assessed now, but they were state assessed, and one of them still remains state assessed. So 5 of them are independent power producers. Sitting here thinking they are almost all, I can think probably less than 1% of their value is real property. It's going to be personal property. So they would be in our community, putting a project in here, and they would be paying sales tax. I acknowledge that. They would not be paying any property tax. Let me tell you from a resident of Converse County how that can impact the roads. And the people that are responsible for taking care of those roads is my county commissioners. Building them, redesigning them so that these people can get those blades in, it's significant. And it's funding out of the county's general fund that comes from property taxes, not necessarily just from that wind farm, but from all property taxes, of which residential is less than 4%. If you add the residential and the ag in my county, it's less than 5% of my total value. So there's, and all of those other industries are paying personal property. So if you are to pull out that 51%, as he said Converse County was, you are potentially significantly impacting the county to provide the services for those industries that are coming in and not paying any of the personal property tax. And that is certainly a tax policy that you all can decide, and we'll administer it as you wish. Mr. Riemann was speaking about the counties. WAM spoke for themselves. I'm going to speak a little bit for special districts. Special districts are those districts that we as citizens have chosen to form to tax ourselves. And the majority of those rely heavily on property tax. And depending on how that was formed and where it's formed, it may have very little residential because it may be outside of a residential area. It may rely heavily on industry because that was why it was formed for services or fire protection. Others may rely heavily on the mineral industry for both the mineral tax ad valorem and for the property tax. So when you take that number out of their equation, they don't have the ability to go anywhere. A lot of them are at their max, 1 mil, 2 mil, 3 mil. I can speak on behalf of Converse County, put that height on a minute. Those special districts are doing budget-based budgeting. When the value goes up as it did, their mill levies are coming down. So they are really trying to be budget-based. Some of them probably not as much as taxpayers would like, but they really look at their reserves and try to do that. I cannot speak for all counties, and I do not wish to. I'm just speaking for Converse County. There was a conversation about if we took out the 12 mills. And in Converse County, we talked about that as elected officials during our budget process. And in our county, based on the minerals that were in our county, we did the math. And I didn't have it with me, but I quickly recreated just a scenario for you. A $250,000 house with no county mills saves the taxpayer about $285. And that is nothing to sneeze at. I absolutely agree with that. It costs the county general fund that's got to provide the roads, the law enforcement, and the services to all those industries that are out there, $43 million. Because that's what that represents. We had such a huge mineral. It's not going to be that this year. It's going down, and we know that. So what did my county do with that? They were able to do some long-term projects that had been on delay, fix some roads that had been washed out, do some things that needed to be done. And part of that revenue that helped do that came from the personal property for those companies. There is a lot of it in my county. There is a lot of industrial property. There is a lot of personal property. I would remind you that your residents that you talked about saving some benefit or trying to target some relief, your residential taxpayers are not paying a property tax. We do not tax them for their personal property. Ranchers pay based on their business property. And I would remind you that ag equipment is exempt. It has a sales tax exemption in the state. So when they purchase their ag equipment, there is not a sales tax applied to it. Yes, there is personal property. And so I just want to make sure that some of this stuff was clear to you as to who's paying it, where it's going. We certainly could administer this bill, and I don't want to be misleading that it's not. I do see some significant impact to my county budgets that I work with my commissioners on, and specifically some special districts that would really find it difficult to keep the x-ray machine going in that district. So with that, one more comment about the ag industry. We did a little survey in our county among some businesses that were hiring that have services for the mineral industry. We do not have the workforce to maintain the companies that are there now. They're bringing in outside workforce. We don't have it. And for those that we do have, they're having a hard time finding any place to live, let alone buying a house. That's not even the option. So a small workforce that's available is a struggle for the industries coming to my community, and I'm speaking for Converse County. And the regulations that other government levels have put on it is the trigger as to whether they're going to stay in my county. They can handle the workforce, some of them told us, because they'll bring it with them. Those people come in here and work for a few weeks, and then they go back to wherever they came from, and they take that revenue with them, because typically the service company pays for a lot of what they're here. So I just want to make sure, and I'm speaking again, that's for Converse County. because we have tried to figure out how to benefit not only the residents in our county, but the renters that are trying to find places to go and that's why we participate in that property tax relief program, put significant money in there. We put in more money in that than we actually take in residential. So there are counties still trying to struggle to help with this. I just wanted you to understand for tangible personal property, how that may affect everybody that's involved. And then I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Huxtable. Any questions for the Assessors Association? Senator Ide.
Thank you, Chairman Bidman. Just another quick question for Ms. Huxtable. Do you know that 51%, do you know what that dollar amount is? Just out of curiosity. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Ide, I do not. I can get it for you. It'll take a little work. And the reason being is we can figure out the value, but the value is spread over multiple tax districts. So to get the actual taxes tied to that actually gets tied into another system. So I can certainly get it for you. And I'd be happy to do that. I just don't know. I'm going to guess that it's probably less than the 51% because a lot of that industrial equipment is in a lower mill levy district.
Okay.
But that's a best guess.
Before you leave, I was wondering, when you were speaking, in your county, how many people in your office are dedicated to enforcement of this personal property tax? Chasing down, going to people's property, inventorying everybody's stuff.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for asking that question. My staff at home, who's carrying the heavy load these last 2 weeks because I've been down here, are doing that right now. I talked to them this morning. They got a bunch of personal property reports in yesterday. My office is cross-trained, so everybody does it. We try to divvy up our workload, so when this heavy time comes, everybody that can does personal property. We have probably, I would say between 750 and 1,000 accounts, bearing in mind that some of my oil companies have multiple accounts, one company, multiple accounts, because we spread them out to be able to manage the number of wells that is on account. We spend almost all of March and the last half of February entering personal property. And I will be honest, the bulk of that is coming from the mineral industry because they have accounts that have hundreds of lines, where my ranchers that turn in or my apartments that turn in, their equipment is probably 4 or 5 lines to a lot of them. It's not that many. So as far as auditing, we try to identify as we field check. We feel we're required to go to property once every 6 years. So as my staff is at that property, we try to record what we see for personal property, just so we can validate that what's on the records is there. We do have agreements with several oil and gas companies that coordinate with us tours every year to pick up new stuff so that I don't let my staff go out by themselves. It's for a safety issue. So we do dedicate quite a bit of time. I don't have the exact number, but I can tell you at this time of the year, we are keying in, as our other assessors, personal property.
Okay, so would it be safe to say if this were to pass, you might have to let a few people go because of you wouldn't need that many people in your office anymore, or would you find something else for them to do?
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe I'd let anybody go because I'm still already short a couple employees because of that workforce, trying to get somebody hired for wages that we can afford as a county level. It would certainly allow us to rearrange our workload a little bit. And we would not be paying quite so much overtime. Maybe I don't pay a lot of it because most of it's a comp situation, but maybe I wouldn't have to work till midnight on most nights. That might be nice.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah. Senator Wright has a quick.
Thank you, Chairman Bidman. Just a quick follow-up to his question. How many people do you have on staff in your office?
Ms.
Thank you.
Huxtable?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Ide, myself, a deputy, and 4 employees currently, 1 coming and 1 going. So
6.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks, Bridget. I see the director is here. She's been busy over in the other revenue committee, judiciary. Do you have anything to add? We're on Senate File 68. If anybody from the department wants to chime in, that'd be great. If not, no worries. Nothing? Okay. All right, well, industry. You know, we can't accept hugs or kisses at the podium here, but no, just kidding. Welcome back to revenue. Travis, why don't you start us off?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and it's good to see the Senate Revenue Committee. Again, I haven't seen you, I think, since last year, so it's always good to be in front of you. You know, we're supportive of this concept, and I could pretty much testify the same thing I testified last year. You know, and for Mr. Chairman, I apologize, Travis Detai, Executive Director of the Wyoming Mining Association. We represent the state's coal companies, uranium, bentonite, trona producers. We also are representing companies that are doing the gold mining out here outside of Cheyenne and companies exploring for rare earths. We have lithium in our portfolio now and hoping to get a couple of more of those hard rock mining sectors in and build that portfolio and generate some more revenue for Wyoming and some jobs for Wyoming. So among those that I mentioned, we're among the highest taxpayers in the state, the largest taxpayers in the state. And I would say that understandably so, over the last year and a half, the debate over personal property taxes, it's a good discussion to have. I think you guys are moving in the right direction and are right to try to provide some relief to those, to your constituents. But I have to say that I get a little frustrated sometimes when I kind of feel like, what about us? What about us? Because just for a reminder to the committee, our coal industry, among the taxes we pay, and we are the heaviest taxed industry in the state, we pay severance tax. We pay ad valorem taxes on production. We pay ad valorem on property. We pay sales, state sales and use taxes. We pay state rents and royalties. We pay federal mineral royalties, not only to the state, but to the federal government. We pay AML fees. We are the largest state that contributes to that fund in Washington, D.C. We also pay black lung fees to the tune of about $140 million annually, and that money goes out of Wyoming. But we're paying it here. Our companies are generating it here. So we are always on the lookout for a little tax relief. As everyone on the dais knows, we are operating under very heavy and difficult regulatory conditions and market conditions. And I think when we talk about a bill like this, which is welcome, by the way, and we thank the bill sponsor for bringing it. We thank you for bringing it up. We're hopeful to see it in the interim and maybe try to work with it a little bit and, you know, kind of maybe alleviate some of the questions of the municipalities and the counties. And I think we can still do that. And that's kind of the gist of my testimony. We want to keep working on this because this would provide some significant relief to my operators. And I think you have to strike that balance when you're talking about taxation and when you're talking about operating to where you're still able to provide, you know, and we're proud to provide it. I mean, the industry is proud to provide those revenues to the state because that's what gives us as citizens of this state, it's what keeps our tax burden low because we're happy to pay the bills. But I think you have to strike that balance as to, you know, be able to provide this much and someone might have to take a haircut. But we've also got to be able to operate, and we also have got to be able to have the funds and have the cash to hire employees, to pay benefits. You know, I've got companies, you know, they're writing our obituary every single day in the coal industry, but I've got companies that are looking at investing significantly in large equipment purchases, and to free up some of that money, you know, give us a little tax relief. It is welcome, and I think Ms. Harpstreet will speak to kind of some of the ideas that we'd like to work on. But you know, regardless of where this particular bill goes, we want to keep this conversation moving forward because I think there's a real opportunity here to provide some real relief to the biggest taxpayers in the state. Mr. Chairman, I'd stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Detai. Any questions for the Mining Association? Thank you, sir. Ms. Harpstreet?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ashley Harpstreet, Executive Director of Wyoming Taxpayers Association. Today, I come before you with no position, but just to offer a potential amendment We agree with what Mr. Detai just said, that we have to be mindful and past speakers of what property tax pays for, and it is a local tax. But there is opportunity here to help our largest taxpayers along with other industries. And I think one of the things that committee members, especially the bringer of the bill, has been talking about is when we're overtaxing an asset that is not worth the tax anymore. So there's a simple amendment you could put in where you look at the index, and I'm taking this from my accountants, so please bear with me. The index, when the asset hits the percentage of the depreciation floor, would balance out, and that's what they've been asking for, to fairly assess, so. That's all I have. I'd stand for questions.
That's excellent. Could you email that to us?
Sure.
Probably can't get it in as a standing committee, but it would be a great committee of the whole amendment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Afternoon,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman.
Obermueller.
Nice to see you again. Pete Obermueller, Petroleum Association of Wyoming. Thanks for taking up this bill. Appreciate the comments from my colleague, Mr. Detai. Same. Let's leave it at that, but I want to mention a couple things. First, the issue with the personal property tax for us is we're obviously we pay the bulk of it like Mr. Detai's members do. The issue with getting rid of it entirely, in our opinion, is that it lets off the hook some commercial payers that don't pay any other taxes like Mr. Detai was talking about. His members have the pleasure of paying black lung taxes that go to West Virginia and other places. That one's particularly irritating. I'm glad he brought that up. But we have severance and all of that that covers the rest of it. So having this discussion is important, and for our sake, we think that there's a way to move it in a way that helps sort of on a de minimis level for small businesses and sort of get out of this ridiculousness of what you were asking about enforcement and all of that. But then just to put a little bit more to what Ms. Harpstreet said is what happens for my members, particularly legacy oil and gas operators, is really old equipment on this indexing continues to, for taxation purposes, grow in value. It gets older and we pay more. And so I think, I'm not sure that getting rid of it entirely, this is just my personal opinion, is necessary, but there are ways to fix it that would really help the largest taxpayers and help sort of de minimis payments, but not let others off the hook who don't have other tax obligations but use Wyoming services to be here. That's going to be a larger discussion that might take the interim. I know that was the plan last year and that didn't happen. I mean, obviously residential property tax sucked all the air out of the room of every other discussion, and that's fine, totally get that. But I think we could have further conversation about this. So, and lastly, Mr. Chairman, if you'll just indulge me, there's this bill and there's one other bill that would offer tax relief to your highest tax-paying industries in Wyoming. The other bill, I'm afraid, because I was smiling, you thought I was joking. I'm not joking. You could today bring up SF 85 and relieve us of taxation on electricity. Everybody who testified against that bill yesterday would immediately flip their position if that happened. And that would be significant relief. You could do it today if you want to do, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate your indulgence that you let me bring that one up.
Always. Thank you, Mr. Obermueller. Any questions for the Petroleum Association? Senator Ide.
Thanks, Senator Bidman. I'll be quick here. Just good to hear some allies in here trying to help out the taxpayers. I understand, the cities, towns, counties, they need an operating budget and it needs to come from somewhere. But comments made, what about me? What about me? I mean, that's my constituents are, and Ashley, with your background with Wyoming Taxpayers Association, correct me if I'm wrong, but from 2017 to 2023, I think the state collected almost exactly $1 billion more in that 6-year period of time from basically all taxes than, and everybody's saying, the state's getting fat and we're scrambling to make a living. So if you could verify that for me, that would be wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Harpstreet.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Ide, I'd have to double check those numbers, but I'd be more than happy to look into that. And Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, just another comment I forgot to bring up when you talked about the mill levy-based budgeting. That, in our opinion, is an example of true tax reform. And that deserves a long conversation that cannot be built while you're flying the plane this session.
I agree. I'm intrigued by if we're gonna do this, obviously, we're gonna have to look at all these special carve-outs that were given to the wind industry. Those, obviously, I think that's what you were alluding to, Mr. Overmueller. This is the only tax they pretty much pay, because we've exempted them from everything else, because they were the cool kid for a while. But if we're gonna do reform like this, we've got to look at all the other exemptions, the data centers, the wind. So the ultimate, just so you know, the ultimate goal is fairness. Everybody gets treated equally, so you guys can compete it out, duke it out in the private sector, and the government's not tipping the scale one way or the other. And we also have a tax policy that's fair and good for the people and the communities that the revenue supports. So it's going to take a lift. Hopefully, like you said, Dare doesn't get sucked out of the room this summer with real property, and we can focus on this. But appreciate your time and your thoughts.
Mr. Chairman, can I add
Yes.
one thing since you opened the door?
Yeah.
Ms. Harbstreet, if you'd cover your ears, please. I do think that the committee in the interim should seriously consider raising the tax on wind from $1 a megawatt hour to $3, putting $3 on solar, and lowering the nuclear to 3.
Thank you.
There are some taxes you could support, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the
Thank you, Mr.
opportunity to
Deaton.
weigh
I
in.
Appreciate that. All right. Any more questions before we let them go? Seeing none? Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. All right. Any more public comment on the personal property tax exemption bill? All right. Anybody on Zoom? Nobody on Zoom. Okay, we'll close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure? It's been moved by French, seconded by Ide. Discussion or amendments? And open it up for. Yeah, okay. Senator Pappas?
Yeah, I just want to throw my 2 cents worth in. You know, as you guys know, I've never been a fan of tangible personal property. I think it's a, difficult tax to enforce. It's just not a good tax, I think, in my opinion. However, it's very an important tax for our state right now. And, I wouldn't mind, I can't support it right now. I wouldn't mind supporting, certainly, a look into how we get rid of it in the future through an interim. But something needs to replace it, okay? If we're going to do that. I don't know what that would look like right now, but if we just repeal it, and I know no one on this committee, well, not no one, myself, I have always said if we're gonna do something, then the state needs to backfill it. And so I hear we put millions of dollars in savings, but and we want to give tax break to everybody, yet we still take the money and put it in the savings. Well, if we want to do these things, then let's start backfilling it. I mean, that's the only way to do it. If you're concerned with the state raking in a lot of money, we need to figure a way to do it. I just think getting rid of this tax without an alternative is irresponsible. I'm not saying that it's not the right way to go, but without a deep dive in an interim with everybody at the table and to look at all the alternatives and the nuances that would happen. I know my county would lose a lot of money if this would happen. And there's nothing to replace those dollars right now. So for that reason, I can't support it, but I would support looking at it in the future because I I don't really like it. I've never even liked the name, tangible personal property. I mean, everybody thinks it's property on you and me, which it's not. It's on business, right? So I don't even like the name. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Pappas. So we'll put you down as a repeal and replace. Yeah, yes. All right, anybody else? Anybody else? Bringer of the bill, what do you got to say?
I think given some of the proposed property tax reliefs and the increase in sales tax and some of the things that are out there right now could more than replace this. I think it's a place to start. And I think if we don't start, we're going to kick the can down the road and we're going to offer, I'm not picking on some of the other bills, but some of them, we all sit down here and call the non-relief relief. We got to start cutting, and until we cut, there is no relief. It just moves around. So I would really like to see us take this upstairs and work it on the floor, because I think there's a couple things that can be done, but I think it can be good. And with that, I'll close, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Ide?
Thank you, Chairman Biteman. I agree with the comments of the bringer of the bill. I think there was a lot of good comments that came out of here today that, you know, this thing could get worked, and it opens up the discussion, especially, you know, personal property that's getting taxed more than it was, you know, when it was purchased 50 years ago. You know, something's not right there. It needs either gone or fixed, some new legislation to deal with those, you know, that unfair part of that personal property tax bill. So I think it's great to move this bill forward, pass it out of here, have all the discussion, and a lot of good ideas come out of it. Thank you, Chairman Bite.
Thank you, Senator. We ready for the question? Question being called. Clayton, please call the roll.
Senator French.
Aye.
Senator Ide.
Aye.
Senator McEwen.
Aye.
Senator Pappas.
No?
Chairman Biteman.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that is 4 ayes and 1 no.
All right, we'll take this upstairs and work it as much as we can and then see where it ends up. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, well, that's that for the bill. I did offer to, I did get an email from Mr. Nelson from WIAC. It's really long, and I will try to condense it down for our next meeting and prepare it or offer him the opportunity to speak in person. But I do, again, want to apologize to him and to some others who were called out by Senator Case last night and weren't here to defend themselves, and we'll rectify that situation. I take responsibility as a chairman for not protecting their integrity when it was being questioned. So my apologies. We'll work better and we'll tighten things up around here. With that, this meeting is adjourned.